All right, so as the Joe Biden administration still has not managed to send out the free at-home COVID tests that they recently promised the American people, the corporate demons over at Walmart and Kroger have decided to arbitrarily use this as an opportunity to jack up their own prices for the COVID tests that they are selling to the American people, price gouging them in the middle of a deadly pandemic. So let's just go ahead and get into some of the details here, because this is ridiculous from so many different levels, both from the perspective of the failures of the Joe Biden administration to adequately ratchet up the production and capacity of tests for the Omicron wave, but also just, a critique of capitalism in general, because the fact that billion-dollar corporations are even allowed to profit off of one of the most fundamental aspects of trying to control a pandemic in tests, the fact that they're even allowed to profit off of this is evil enough in and of itself. So let's just go ahead and get into some of the details here. So from CNBC, they say that Walmart, Kroger raise at-home COVID test prices after a White House agreement expires. So they say that Walmart and Kroger raised the price of Abbott's at-home COVID-19 test kit after an agreement with the White House to sell the tests at a reduced price expired, the company said Tuesday. Okay, so already you see what the problem is here, right? We have the federal government that should be using the Defense Production Act and other authorities that they have at their disposal to actually force the ratcheting up of the capacity of tests to be produced and then distributed for free to the American people. But instead of doing that and using the power of the federal government, they are like weaselly walking up to these billion-dollar corporations and politely asking them to lower the cost for the American people, again, on tests that should be free, okay? Why is the federal government, why is the Joe Biden administration going up to these corporations that are making billions of dollars in profit during the pandemic? Walmart has seen nearly record sales in the last 2 years over the course of the pandemic, and you're going up to these people and politely asking them to lower the price. It's just absolutely stupid. This shouldn't have been a deal in the first place. None of these companies should be allowed to be selling these tests for profit at all, okay? So that's problem number one, but they give a little bit more details here, saying that the Binax Now kit, one of the first at-home tests to be authorized by the federal government, was listed on Walmart's website Tuesday for $19.88, up from $14 last month, and Kroger listed the test for $23.99, so $24 for literally just a couple of tests, okay? I need you guys to understand, in other countries, especially let's just take like other OECD countries within Europe, okay? Their testing procedure hasn't been nearly perfect, but even if you just look at the difference between the US and the UK, you can go on an official UK government website and just like order a bunch of tests for you and your family, or you can walk into a pharmacy and have easy access to either extremely cheap or completely free tests, and you're not gonna have just a couple of them, let alone be paying damn near $24 out of pocket to a billion-dollar corporation to try to be responsible and actually get tested for COVID. So the difference between the US's handling of this versus even other capitalist countries around the world is just embarrassing. It's just a complete fucking joke. But they continue here saying that President Joe Biden announced the agreement that had just expired with Walmart, Amazon, and Kroger in September, saying it was part of his administration's plan to ramp up testing and better detect and control the coronavirus variant that then posed the greatest danger, Delta, and the 3-month agreement to sell the tests at cost expired last month, just as the new Omicron variant began advancing quickly across the United States. So again, fantastic fucking timing. Number one, don't know why you wouldn't just automatically renew this deal in the first place. But again, the main message here is you shouldn't be relying on these absurd billion-dollar corporations out of the generosity of their heart to offer these tests at cost as some sort of a temporary agreement, okay? These people are making billions of dollars profiting off of the pandemic, okay? These tests should not be a part of those profits. These tests should be supplied to the American people for free, okay? That's how you would actually have a substantive federal response to a pandemic. But of course, a neoliberal ghoul like Joe Biden is not going to go with that strategy. But just to give you more of a perspective in terms of Walmart and Kroger and these corporations and what they have been doing recently. So again, we just saw that CDC guidance that came out lowering the isolation period from 10 days down to 5 days. And I told you guys that that was basically in line with exactly what corporate America wanted. And we are now starting to see some of the results of that come to fruition. And this is a story here from Fox Business that came out yesterday. Walmart cuts paid leave in half for COVID positive workers. So they are literally slashing the paid leave for people who get COVID, essentially punishing their workers for getting sick with COVID, or at the very bare minimum, punishing their workers if they want to actually take the full 10 days that they would have previously been allowed allowed to isolate to then not expose fellow coworkers to COVID. Okay, so it's just, again, you see how the CDC recommendations were exactly in line with what corporate America was asking them to do, and then they turn around and they do some absolutely ridiculous ghoul shit like this. Okay, and just to give you another perspective in terms of how well Walmart has been doing throughout the pandemic, here from one of Bernie Sanders' right-hand men here, Warren Gunnels. He says that Walmart made $13.5 billion in profits last year. The Walton family became $60 billion richer during the pandemic. Taxpayers subsidized the poverty wages of Walmart workers by $6.2 billion a year, and now Walmart is jacking up the price of COVID tests that should cost $0. Disgusting. And disgusting is absolutely right there. I mean, even just some of the specifics within these statistics, we pay $6.2 billion essentially in taxpayers subsidizing the welfare state that Walmart is forcing some of their workers to go and utilize because they aren't paying them living wages for the work that they are doing. So again, it's not just a lesson in the failures of the Joe Biden administration not using the full powers at his disposal. It's also just a lesson in how capitalist exploitation continues to be completely rampant in this country, because, $6.2 billion, that's $6.2 billion that Walmart should have taken out of these profits right here to actually pay their workers for the value of the labor that they are providing that makes the Walton family $60 billion richer during a fucking pandemic. So that's lesson number one on the capitalist side of that. But on the Joe Biden side of this, okay, it's not as if, and I've been hearing all of this pushback recently, whenever I talk about this, especially on Twitter, but even in some of my YouTube comments too, people will be like, well, what could Joe Biden have done? Nobody saw this Omicron variant. Even Kamala Harris came out and said, like, nobody could have predicted the Omicron variant and this massive surge, demand for tests, and that everybody would need to be testing right now. Well, that's just absolutely not true. In fact, Joe Biden himself rejected a plan way back in October to ramp up the production of tests. So this is what he could have done. So the Biden administration turned down public health expert plan in late October that called for manufacturing and sending over 700 million rapid COVID-19 tests to Americans ahead of the holidays, per the Vanity Fair report that they had come out with. So again, 700 million rapid COVID-19 tests that we could have had before the Omicron surge to then go protect and try to prevent a lot of the deaths and the hospitalizations and the cases that we have been seeing. Okay, so I just covered a story yesterday with the backlogs being tossed in there. We had nearly 1 million new cases in one fucking day. Okay, so Omicron is goddamn everywhere in the United States, and Joe Biden could have done something about that. Okay, I'm not saying it would have been, a perfect plan, but if we had 700 million COVID tests available to the American people for free before the holidays, before everybody got together for Christmas and spread it around with their families, then we could have prevented a lot of these cases that we are seeing. We could have prevented a lot of the deaths that we are seeing, and that was an active choice that Joe Biden made himself. And now he's coming out and he's saying, I wish that I had anticipated this months ago. I wish that we could have foreseen this. Well, you did foresee it. You just chose the wrong fucking option. You chose to be a neoliberal ghoul and basically choose the cost-saving option, and the result of that is disastrous for public health. So that much is clear. But again, Joe Biden could have done significantly more on this front to ratchet up the capacity for at-home tests. And what else could he have done? Well, he could have utilized, as pointed out here by Matthew Cortland, he says the failure of the Joe Biden administration to fully leverage the Defense Production Act and related legal authorities is costing American lives. And again, he's talking about Kroger and Walmart ratcheting up their prices. But some of the other stuff that he points out here is also important. He says, why harp on this? And he says, because it seems to me that fundamentally the Biden administration is still trying to do this pandemic response on the cheap, i.e. in a way that won't disturb corporate profits and won't disturb intellectual property to prioritize human lives. So again, listen, that's pretty much exactly what we have been seeing throughout the entire course of the handling of the pandemic within the United States. Whether it's, Donald Trump or whether it's Joe Biden, there are marketable differences between them. Joe Biden has been extremely pro-vaccine, but we're seeing the results of having an only pro-vaccine and aggressively pro-vaccine focused strategy. Okay, I again am very pro-vaccine myself. I think everybody should go get vaccinated. I say that all the time, but at the same time, that's not the entire picture of trying to handle a pandemic, and you're seeing the results of that. Okay, the results of that, if you don't have adequate testing, if you don't have adequate, let's say, paid leave or sick leave for workers, as corporations like Walmart, which happens to be the largest employer of Americans, if you don't have these corporations that are guaranteeing people paid sick leave when they do get COVID, so so they can go isolate, and you don't have adequate testing so that people know that they have COVID so that they can avoid going out and seeing other people. And when you have the CDC coming out and making decisions on behalf of corporate America to lower the threshold for isolation, then, I mean, you're going to get the results that we have right now, which is damn near, at least 600 to 800,000 cases a day, nearly right now, and roughly like 1,200 to 1,300 deaths per day. So it's just absolutely catastrophic failures from the top down, both from the Biden administration, but you also get a picture from these stories of the perverse nature of allowing capitalism, or the capitalist mode of production, or the profit motive in general to exist in a healthcare system.